Hello, everybody. Welcome back to American Experiment Radio. My name is Jonathan Hanna. Today we have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Tony Mesta. He's born in El Paso. He shifted through call centers post-graduation until he joined Young Americans for Liberty at age 25. He's a deontologist libertarian, advocating for gun rights, school choice, and medical freedom. He's been promoted several times with Young Americans for Liberty, and now he's a big shot student rights director. Interim student rights director. He has experience in many political roles, worked directly with politicians for many years, and he's somebody who, Tony's a good friend of mine, and when I have a question, I tend to call him because he's somebody who usually knows more than the rest of us, given his experience. But yeah, here he is. Welcome, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for that, Johnny. You're one of my best friends as well, man, and definitely very flattering. I don't know everything, but I appreciate I can help you out.
Tell us about your shift from working at call centers to joining Young Americans for Liberty.
Oh, that's quite the story. So after I graduated high school, I really wanted to go into college and study to actually be a doctor. And due to some relationship circumstances, I wasn't able to go to college at the time, or rather, in retrospect, didn't want to, and didn't want to put my relationship aside there. But I went ahead and decided to start working, and the first place I worked was Empire Today, that carpet place, 800-588, that whole song. I was the guy that was on the other end when you would call. So I would make sure carpet got installed, stuff like that. I just sat in a desk and answered calls. I figured, I got into this. At that time, it was 2013. $8 an hour was fantastic money for me. I was losing my mind. Like, oh my God, I have money of my own. After about, I think it was like maybe 8 months, I figured, hey, I'm going to go to another call center where the pasture is probably better. And that started a continuous trend where I relocated, working for pretty much every cable company in existence, every internet company you can think of. But yeah, it wasn't great. The money was okay. I was making decent money. I was able to support my daughter. But at the same time, it wasn't fulfilling whatsoever. Once my relationship kind of fell apart and I wasn't with my daughter, I started wandering around just really aimlessly. And lo and behold, I was just looking at memes, laying on my couch. And there was an ad for Young Americans for Liberty. I didn't really believe that it existed, if I'm being honest. I was looking at it and I told myself, wow, there's like an organization that just like gives you housing and pays for your gas and pays you to like knock doors. So I went ahead and sent in an application, and that was to be an election coordinator. This was back in June of 2020. That was when basically my libertarian moment had started to happen because the COVID lockdowns really started to push me towards liberty. I remember being told that I couldn't leave my house, and my first thought was, I want to leave my house. So, I rallied my friends and we would go on walks and we would just hope and pray that a cop would come by and try us, to try to mask us up, to try to throw us into the house. I was a little bit of a hoodlum, so I kind of really wanted them to try me, but it never happened. We just walked around and had very pleasant days. I heard from someone that called me back. His name is Nathan Roon. He was the Michigan State Chair, I believe. And he tells me like, hey man, like, just wanted to find out more about you, what are you about? And I told him, like everything I'm into, I enjoy following politics. I can't even fathom actually caring about what I do. I couldn't even comprehend what my life would look like if I actually was able to work for what I care about, what I look into on my own free time. He thought I was great. At the time, now that I recruit those people, I would have lost my mind if I found myself, because people don't just come across like that. So you don't find Jonathan Hanna's, you don't find Tony Mesta's, you don't find Zulfi Sumro's, you don't find Matt Bollinger's. They don't just happen across, you find them very far in between. I interviewed, they really liked me, and I got pushed off to a final interview with J.P. Kirby, who very poetically is the position that I'm doing now. And he interviewed me. I remember it so vividly. I talk to him a lot now, and I keep telling him, hey man, you're the one that hired me. You're the reason I'm here. And he doesn't remember that because he had hundreds of interviews all the time. To him, I was just another election coordinator, you know? But to me, I remember very vividly, he was getting in his car. He really was excited to hear about me. He was telling me all about Yale and everything that they do and the mission and how much liberty matters and about Ron Paul. And I had never even heard of Ron Paul at the time. So I'm just like, this is great. This sounds great. And he tells me like, hey man, I'm going to push you to the next, step here. I really like you. And I remember breaking down in tears, just crying and being like, my God, I am actually going to be able to work in something I care about. This is all real. Like there's no way. And I was in a sense of, I was basically just in just absolute disbelief that I had the shot to be able to do this. I was donating plasma, and I remember I was walking home and I got an email from Yale, and it was my contract to become an election coordinator. And I looked at it and I thought, my God, it's real. Look at it. It's all very official. It's got legal wording. There's a company on there, everything. This is real. And it said that my start date was in a week. And I told myself, all right, bet. I had like $3,000 saved from my COVID unemployment. I went ahead and dropped all of that on a car, and I drove out to Greensburg, Kansas, to start my first campaign. So that's how I got involved in Yale from call centers there.
How do you balance your beliefs as a deontologist libertarian with the practical side of politics?
That's an interesting thought that I think about that a lot, actually. Utilitarianism is the belief that, the ends justify the means. If we have to steal all the money from all the people and all the taxes to be able to get, health care, why does it matter if Joe Schmo can treat his back? It matters because that you're stealing someone's money. So, I'm the antithesis to that, to where I believe we should address these problems culturally through free market ideas, through any means possible that is legitimately peaceful, instead of stealing someone's money or doing something violent to justify the outcome. Right. So really, what Yale taught me, though, is yes, that is the priority. That is the prerogative in every possible way. But with that said, it doesn't mean that it's always something feasible to do. What Yale has taught me is that there is a line between is something tangible to actually have a victory, and is it radical enough to still push that Overton window to radical liberty without it being too radical where we sound like we're crazy. Yeah. And a lot of people have a lot of hard time understanding that. A lot of people say that we're not principled enough. A lot of people say that we're too principled. A lot of people say, that doesn't matter. You can't fight for that because it's not tangible. And then there's other people that say we don't go far enough all the time. The people that are at Yale do a lot of hard work to make sure that we are taking the most tangible and most effective route to be able to increase liberty. Yale is basically what we like to call ourselves is we are a manufacturing site for liberty activists. Educate, train, mobilize effective youth activists that are going to go out and make liberty win. There are certain times where liberty doesn't make sense. For example, if Joe Schmo can't go out and steal from someone because that breaks the nap. I don't like the nap, really. It's a terrible way of handling things, but it's the best possible thing I can give right now in a quick summary that, if we have some kind of principles to where you can't hurt someone, you can't take their stuff, it makes sense that you don't have the freedom to do that because you're hurting other people. And that's really, the only restrictions I personally believe in. And that includes, something like, age of consent laws. You can't go out dating a kid. That includes something like, you can't go out and necessarily own your own nuke right off the bat. I don't know. That actually I might be on the side of that, but something like really tangible that makes sense that there's state intervention, like drunk driving, for example. So, there's a lot of things like that can be debated constantly. To each their own. Everyone has what I like to call their planks, pretty much what's most important above another issue. Like I put gun rights at the very top of everything so that we can defend ourselves against any threat, foreign or domestic. Someone else might really care about not having to mow their lawn because the state's telling them to. I don't necessarily care that much about that. That's down here, but it also is valid. It's a valid concern. So everything is a case by case basis of really how important it can be, and that's what debate is healthy for, and that's why it's good to talk to people with dissenting opinions.
Yeah, for sure. Can you tell me about some of your favorite moments over the course of your campaigns? Like, what are some issues that you helped get past that you're really proud of?
Everything, man. My first campaign I mentioned earlier in Greensburg, Kansas, I'm very proud of. We got Brett Fairchild elected out there. We were out there in the middle of rural Kansas fighting in this primary. Out in that area of Kansas, there's no Democrat running. So what you end up getting is a Republican primary only that no Democrat bothers running in the general for. So the primary is you winning. I remember her name vividly to this day, Donna Honer-Quayle. Donna Honer-Quayle was an elite that lived in Pratt, Kansas. And she was very threatened that we had a door knocking team out there. I remember knocking doors and she would send cars to follow us. She had different volunteers watching what we were doing. It was ridiculous. This lady was nuts, and she thought that she was going to win. She had all the money, but Brett was putting in the work. Brett Fairchild is amazing. He is one of my favorite legislators. Of course, he has a fond place in my heart because of what he's done and because it was my first campaign, but he went out there. He champions everything that we expect our Liberty Republicans to do. He is a Ron Paul in Kansas, and I am very proud that I helped him get there. I went to New Hampshire for the New Hampshire primaries, and what they did is during that deployment for Operation Win at the Door, they put us all in a giant room in a hotel, and they had this guy come and train us on how to use the clipboarding method for door knocking. And I remember in that room, there was so many people that to this day are some of my closest friends that I didn't even know were them at the time. Jacob Catlin was in that room. People like that have grown extremely close to me were in that room training right alongside me. We got one of the absolute worst areas for New Hampshire. Our election director, Matthew Castaneda at the time, love that guy. He was telling us, go out there, guys. This is what HQ expects from us, try to get this and that. He was trying so hard to get us to be motivated and go out there and knock these doors. And no one else really cared. They were there for either a paycheck or they were there and realized what the hard work really is that we're putting in. And they didn't want to give it 100%. That campaign was especially special for me because Jacob basically trained me on how to be an extremely hardworking door knocker. And in retrospect, knocking doors isn't the most glamorous thing in the world. But that physical aspect, I wouldn't have gone that hard and actually cared, especially because at the time I was the heaviest I've ever been. I believe I was at 280 pounds when I first started. I pushed myself to the point where my feet were falling apart. Jacob would ask me if I was okay because when I'd get back to the hotel, we were staying in a Super 8 at the time. I would knock out immediately and my feet, he could see them from the other side of the bed that were falling apart. And I would tell him nah, man, I'm going to be fine. And I would just put some lotion on and throw my socks on and go to the next day, I knocked for Glenn Bailey, Lex Berezny. I knocked for a good amount of people out there in the primary. Harry Bean, Norm Silber, and Glenn Aldrich. I remember Harry Bean because I met one of my best friends there that actually was, we were talking to earlier, Anthony Henderson, when we were doing polling at the end of the campaign. It's a very special campaign to me because that's actually when I started talking to my current fiance. At the time, I was supposed to go back to the New Hampshire Generals after a break, but I told my boss at the time, I told him, hey, can I go to Ohio instead? I really want to meet this girl in person, and there's a campaign out there in Ohio, and I want to be there. And so he did. He sent me out there, and I was able to go and knock for Ron Ferguson, who at this point is extremely important to YAL and to Liberty. And thankfully, I was able to meet my now fiance in person, fell in love with her, and we've been very happy for the last 3 years. And Yao helped me make that happen. If it wasn't for Yao, I would have never been able to meet her in person. I would have never been able to go on our first date. And actually, election night for Ron Ferguson was the night of the 2020 election that Donald Trump is so famously very salty about. And I remember watching the results with him, and we kept being like, well, Ron's going to win. And then Ron won. And we looked at the results, and we were like, oh, Trump's got this. Like, he's going to get reelected, whatever. And we all went home, we went to sleep, and we know what happened the next day. So, yeah, after that, we took quite the break. Operation One at the Door didn't have any work for me after that. A month after that, I got a call from one of my former bosses who asked me if I wanted to go and knock for Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue out in Georgia. Now, this campaign, I really only did, unfortunately, to be honest, just to have work. And then in January, I got a call to start what is now known as the Hazlet Action Program, along with one other field director. I was able to be one. Yeah, I was able to be one of the first field directors for Hazlet Action Program, or at the time, it was called the Grassroots Action Director. And they sent us all across America trying to find a campaign for us to start doing to try to basically start this off. They first sent us out, I believe it was to pretty sure it was Idaho, to do like grocery tax repeal. We couldn't do that because of some legal stuff, so we ended up going down to Kentucky to pick up Anthony Henderson, and that was the constitutional carry campaign in Alabama, and that's when I was truly able to first knock doors for Hazlet Action. And then eventually I was able to lead a team in Texas for constitutional carry, and that is one of my proudest moments. When I led Texas constitutional carry, we actually were able to pass it. We did a lot of the door knocking centered around Dade Phelan. He is one of the leaders of the Texas House. And throughout this whole time, I thankfully was able to juggle my relationship, being able to still video chat my daughter, and being able to do what I loved on the road. After that year, I remember just telling myself, like, all right, cool, I want to do this next year. And January of 2022 comes around. Daniel Stewart calls me and he tells me, hey, Tony, I have this really important, deployment for you. We want to fight vaccine mandates in New Hampshire. During that time, I actually was reached out to by Tim Baxter. He was running for Congress at the time. And Tim, he started having dinner with us, talking to us a lot. And I really enjoyed Tim in general because he seemed to really kind of champion everything that Yao believes in, everything that I already had believed in, and I'm already completely bought into Yao, and I'm here for the mission. And he seemed, and he is about that to this day. I remember one day just offering him, hey, Tim, if you ever have time on the weekends that you can give me to go and knock doors for you, I'll go knock doors for you for free. And he goes, oh, it's great. Yeah. And so he sets me up with Dursey, his campaign manager, and Dursey then proceeds to set me up with a walkbook. I go out and I champion Tim Baxter, and I come back with, I think it was 4 or 5 selfies that day, very excited, very much like, let's go, Tim's gonna get this. And he saw the effort I was putting in that day, and he decided to hire me as his political director. So I put my resignation into Yale, which I never thought I would do. I remember even typing out my resignation letter. I'd said in the resignation letter, like, you guys changed my life. Like, you helped me change my life genuinely. If it wasn't for you coming into my life, I would have never been in this movement. I would have never had a door to walk into, much less work as hard as I have. That is the only reason I now know I can work hard to begin with. I never worked hard on anything in my life until I showed up here. It was very heartfelt. And I remember telling Daniel Stewart, I called him on the phone. I told him, like, hey, you're one of the best managers I've ever had in my life. This isn't something about you. This is all because I want to go help Tim win. So I did. I went and I moved into Tim Baxter's campaign house, which is actually when I met you, Johnny. And thankfully was able to just try to help Tim get across the finish line. We didn't do very hot, unfortunately. But Tim did champion liberty the whole time. He moved that Overton window as far as he possibly could at all times. And, at the end of the day, Caroline Levitt she copied a lot of what Tim said, and it was very irritating for us, but at least she was behind Tim, the best candidate to get the nomination. So it is what it is. Caroline then went on to lose. So, that is what it is, unfortunately, there. And then I remember I went home and I told myself, well, we lost. Took a big L to the face. It happens, But I had a campaign for Shelley Luther in Texas. She was running for Texas Senate. And she's the hairstylist that got her salon shut down during COVID, and she insisted on reopening to give her people jobs. Yeah. She actually recently had a brain aneurysm, and thank God she survived and is recovering. I'm very happy for her. She's the only other loss I ever experienced, so it did hurt. It sucked, And I remember sitting there, and then my former boss, again, he reaches out to me, and he goes, hey, I have some work for you with someone here. And this was election night. And he's like, hey, come over and talk to me about this. And I go over to one of our common friends' house. And I show up and he tells me, like, hey, I have work with this girl named Catalina Lauf. She's out in Illinois. They're looking for a field director. I'm going to ask for more pay than you got here, but, we're going to have to negotiate. So I wait. During that time, I go ahead and start looking into Catalina Lauf. And it turns out she was the primary opponent for Adam Kinzinger out in Illinois at one point. And I start looking into her. She's all over Donald Trump's YouTube. She was formerly a staffer for Trump's White House, and she's just overall seemed to be a very strong voice for the right. I found myself, I remember being very scared that she wasn't going to be aligned with what I believe in, because it's so rare that I would find someone that was genuinely a liberty Republican. And I actually got her sister's number from my former employer, who was, his name is Justin Grice. He's a very good friend of mine. I appreciate everything he's ever done for me. So he gives me Madeline Lauf's number. Madeline then at that point proceeds to not pick up my calls. I remember calling and just being like, hey, I was told that, I would be coming out sometime soon to be like a field director or something. I haven't heard from anybody. What's going on here? And she wouldn't pick up. So I just kept calling. I called her like 4 times a day. And I remember telling myself, like, hey, you're with your fiance right now. At the time, she was still my girlfriend. I was living with her and I was happy. And I was like, well, if she doesn't answer, it's not the end of the world. I'll get a job here. I'll do something small while I wait for more work politically. It's fine. But I'm not going to just, sit around. So I called and I called and I called. And sure enough, eventually she picked up and she goes, hey, thank you for being proactive, Tony. I got your voicemails. I got your text. Thank you so much for reaching out. Yeah, no, we've got housing for you. Just show up here at this point, X day. And that was like a week later. And we'll get everything started. So I go, okay, that's great. And I showed up to a hotel in Woodstock, Illinois. And I remember checking in. And as I was checking in, Catalina Lauf and Madeline Lauf walked in. I was very surprised. They're very like TV ridiculous person looking.
Yeah.
It kind of takes you aback when you meet someone that's that influential, that's strong, And I was like, wow, okay, these people are real. And so they proceed to tell me, like, you're good here in the hotel. We want to give you a rest day after this. So I go, okay, well, that sounds great to me. You're paying me for a free day of sitting here in this hotel. Why not? Right. So I went ahead and I enjoyed that day. And then I proceeded to have one of the most important campaigns to me that has ever happened. I believed in Catalina from the get-go, and I thought that, at the minimum, she's going to be a great candidate, even if we're not aligned. And consistently, she continued to impress me, because I thought that she was just a generic Republican trying to use her looks to get by. That's what everyone always thinks about her. And little by little, I was very impressed, because she would start rattling off about Mises, about Ayn Rand, about Ron Paul and Rand Paul. I found out that she was actually endorsed by Rand. So I was just increasingly more and more impressed. And I told myself, all right, well, I'm bought in. That's it. Like, she's got me in workaholic mode. So I did. I worked my ass off every day. I walked into that office at night in the morning, left at 9 o'clock at night. I would talk to my fiance at the time just on the phone while I was working in there. I refused to leave that office until I knew that I did everything I could that day. And that's where I really started to learn mass organization techniques. The only thing I knew before then was from a book I read that actually Winnie Clegg had actually recommended to me. I learned about organizing people, about buying people in, about getting people to meet with her, setting up events. And eventually some drama happened, and I ended up being her campaign manager. And I was just handling everything of her day to day, all the time, tagging along with her to champion the shit out of her as much as I could. And I'm very proud of that as well. She may not have won, but she got really close, especially for being in Illinois. And to this day, I don't know, she hasn't told me much so far. She's keeping it very quiet, but she's showing up on podcasts again.
Yeah.
I just saw her on Valuetainment. She debated Nick Fuentes because he was saying that women shouldn't be doing anything in politics and women shouldn't go to college or some dumb incel stuff like that. She was debating him on that, and along with a panel of other people. I'm very proud of the work I did there. And then I went home and told myself, well, I lost again, another L to the face. Yeah. And every time I kept losing, thankfully, I'm very proud to say I kept losing upwards.
Yeah.
I was sitting there in my room and I told myself, well, another L to the face. I'll probably go back to Ohio, spend some more time with my girl. Like, it's going to all be okay, whatever, soothing myself. And I get a call from Jacob Torville, who at the time was director of campus for Young Americans for Liberty. And he asked me, like, how did it go out there? I was following Catalina's race because I'm from Illinois, and we get to talking, and I tell him, like, yeah, no, it was great. I really enjoyed being able to organize such mass amounts of people, getting them to, come together and volunteer. And he goes, oh, so you got like experience with mass organization? And I go, yeah. And he goes, you should apply for deputy regional director. I go, sure. And here I am. That's all it took to get me into campus. I started as deputy regional director of the Northeast in December of last year. I jumped on with Angelo Veltri, one of my best lifelong friends, who I had actually met in New Hampshire at one of Bruce Fenton's events. Bruce Fenton is an amazing Liberty guy that ran as U.S. Senate out there in New Hampshire.
I remember
when I was with Tim Baxter. I met him at one of those events, and right away we were fast friends, and I was very happy to work under him. And so, yeah, he sent me all over the Northeast, New York, Maine, New Hampshire, and I just attempted to spring up chapters everywhere I went, Vermont, and just invaded schools and just found people that needed to be found. I was able to activate activists. I was able to find Chris Brooks, who is now New York State Chair. I was able to spend a lot of time out in Maine and cultivate our taser ban fight there. When I was out at Binghamton on my very first invasion, the very first time I ever went out to ever do anything on a college campus, I was at SUNY Binghamton, and I was having a panic attack in my car because I had never done petitions before. I had only done it for this small group that I won't even mention because they were terrible. I had to work for a public sector union. It was disgusting. I actually quit just because of how disgusted I felt in funneling money to the state. So I had never gone out and faced people my own age and attempted to convince them of anything. My social anxiety was crippling me. I kept telling myself, you got this, Tony, you got this. So I drank some coffee. I went out there and I proceeded to, with getting a goal of 40 signatures on my pepper spray petition, return with 248 signatures on my petition. I'm proud to say that just yesterday, as SRC director, I found that my petition that I championed on my own, that I was not able to find any help to do, I was there alone and championed all those signatures. It just passed, and I was able to unban SUNY Binghamton's pepper spray ban on my own.
By yourself? Nice.
On my own, single-handedly. And that was the first time I ever invaded a campus. Yeah. So I'm very proud of that. And, I proceeded to go out there and do the same thing in a lot of other places. I couldn't get ever past 200 again. But I did get in the high 80s, high 90s. There was some days I came back after getting 9 signatures. It was terrible. But there was some days better than others, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I got to travel all over the Northeast, upstate New York, New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut, everywhere. And I got to meet up with my state chairs, who I love to death. Anthony Pecoraro became one of my lifelong friends. Wyatt Ford became one of my lifelong friends. I got to meet Ariana Alonso, Matt Cairo, all from being in that region. It was very rewarding. And then at one point, Angelo had moved in. He decided to move over to become director of student rights. I told myself, hey, I really like student rights. I want to apply for that. But at this point, I don't think I can outmatch Angelo in my resume to get that position. So that sucks. But, good luck to him. I hope he does well. It's going to be fine. Eventually, they open up a position to become student rights strategist, which is the basically the partner job of the student rights director, where you're out there, you're strategizing, you are sent into the field to help a chapter that is getting on their feet with a fight. I applied and gave it my damn all in my interview, and I'm proud to say I got that job and was able to transition to that at the beginning of August. And as I was working on learning the ropes, and I was getting accustomed to the job, learning legal resources, learning where our fights are, learning how to know if a fight is viable, all of these little mechanics in our in all of our software. Angelo departed very suddenly from Young Americans for Liberty last week, actually. And so I am now interim student rights director. Very long-winded thing, but I love everything that I've done, to the point, like I've said, where it has negatively impacted my personal life. So I do feel the need to explain everything I've done, because you ask, what is something that you're proud of? I'm proud of everything I've done up to now, even down to the last detail of every work that I've done. Because if I'm not, then what was it all for?
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're definitely somebody to look up to. That, I mean, ever since I first started, believe it or not, you're the first person to tell me I was any good. So it was, it's flattering just to be able to interview you and sit here and talk to such an invaluable member of the Liberty community like yourself. I mean, you're an extremely hard worker. You're extremely dedicated to what you do, and it's very inspiring. I've always looked to you as somebody who I would want to be like in this industry, after a couple of more years of experience and whatnot. But definitely thank you for all you do in championing the issues, my friend.
Just a few words about Jonathan Hannock here. He was one of the hardest workers I've ever witnessed. He's helped volunteer for more things than anyone can ever say. He does this and this goodness of his heart, So any of you guys watching, support him, help him do what he can do, because he deserves success in every possible way.
All right. Do you have any new projects, something coming up that you might want to tell anybody about?
Well, I'm currently working on trying to gather the mess that is student rights campaigns right now. That's keeping my attention. And as I'm mentioning, I have had a reflection to where I understand that my personal life definitely needs to matter more to me than the mission, as much as it hurts to say that. So I've really been taking a step back, honestly, from activism and just working during my work hours. And I've gone to the gym every morning for 22 straight days. I've found God, and I've been studying the Bible every morning and every night. So honestly, my message really at this end of this is, even if you do work as hard as I did, don't neglect the people you love, because you're going to regret it. And there's always a balance in life of working hard and also still loving what you do. If I had to say one thing I'm working on that matters is my dear friend Angelo Veltri. He's starting something called Save Long Island. He desperately wanted to be around his family that he loves very dearly, especially after reflecting on both of our situations where we're trying to really love love our families before the mission as much as we love the mission. And he's out there doing really, really inspiring work. He calls it, he's the light bulb in the darkness of Long Island. And he wants to be that light bulb. So if you guys can give him some support. I used to be chief of staff for Liberty Policy Alliance, but I didn't have the time to be able to invest into them anymore. But support them, do everything you can to donate to them, give them time, volunteer time. They need people to do calls for donations all the time. Just 30 minutes, 45 minutes of your day, just call someone and tell them how great LPA can be. But really, for me personally, all I'd ask is, just pray for me, because I'm trying to win my wife back at the moment, and sometimes it's hard. So I'd appreciate any of y'all's prayers.
Absolutely. And to follow up on the, I'll be doing donor calls for LPA. I was just on the call the other day with Sean Miller, and I'll be donating my time to them. They already have my donation from last year, so they're definitely doing good things at LPA. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think that about covers everything that I can think of.
Yeah, I've never been able to actually have a platform to kind of tell my story, so I appreciate you guys, and it's a lot that I've been thankful to be able to do, and it's all thanks to Young Americans for Liberty and Make Liberty Win. I'm thankful to Tim Baxter, to Catalina Lau for allowing me to be on their staff. All these opportunities that these wonderful people have extended to me. So, I hope that those people exist in your life and in anyone's life that's watching that wants to get involved. And if you're ever looking for work, I got plenty of networking that will get you work. Just reach out to me,
Y'all heard it here first. Tony Mesta offering jobs to the general public out here. Here we go. All right, Tony, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it. And you have yourself a great night, all right?
You too, Johnny.
All right, this has been American Experiment Radio with Johnny and Tony. Later.